Yo, what's up, everybody? It's Dixon, and we're back with another edition of 95X's Locals Only Podcast. We are joined by this week's Locals Only Podcast special guest, Kayleigh Goldsworthy, who also finds herself in the Locals Only Spotlight every weekday at 6:05 p.m. Kayleigh, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
I appreciate you doing this. Kayleigh's currently on the left coast, and we
Hmm.
were able to catch a day off on President's Day to make this work. So I thank you so much for your time. It means a
Of
lot to catch
course.
up. Um, Listen, I got to be honest. I'm just going to start with this, right? Because I know that the laziest form of conversation is talking about the past, right? But I think
Sure.
we have to acknowledge the past so that we can dive directly into the present and what the future holds. So, for those that are unaware, Kayleigh and her sister Kalina had a wonderful band from Syracuse called the Scarlet Ending.
Mhm.
That both myself and Zanetta, who's our part timer on the weekend, obsess over pretty consistently. We talked about it recently with former bandmate Nick Streeter on an edition of the podcast. Um, just want to say, in hindsight, looking back after all these years, how far ahead of your time you were with that project and that band, how much it still means to so many people here, myself included in that. Like Ghosts, especially, is to me like one of the best albums to have ever come out of Syracuse, and I think that it is still 13, 14 years later one of the most underappreciated pieces of art that Syracuse has ever seen, and not really acknowledged in a way that they should.
You're gonna make me tear up. I sincerely appreciate that. It's funny because I was listening to the episode with Nick and you did make me cry. So thank you for that. But it forced me to re-listen to those records. Not that I don't choose to from time to time, but every once in a while it prompts me to like check out what we were doing and how we were because as huge a part of my life that band was, um, sometimes like reminiscing on it kind of makes me sad because I felt like we really had something special and something really cool. And something that I think is really interesting is that there's such a great music scene outside of hardcore in Syracuse. And it does kind of feel like there was like a little bit of this wall where we kind of like couldn't quite get out or nothing around couldn't quite break in. And listening to those records, yeah, I'm still so proud of everything we did. I'm still so proud of the music that we made. We were different from the beginning, and I think that was like our problem, but also our solution the whole time. Um, and like I said, yeah, listening back, I'm like, yeah, I could see myself putting a record out like this again, 100%, like right now.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that spoke volumes to me about that band was not only how incredibly like musical it was during a time period where let's just be honest, like a lot of music was very dumb, right? And the commercial stuff was very shallow and vapid. So to have this authentic thing come along, especially in a market like Syracuse, where the songs are fantastic, the live performance is insane on so many levels, from musicianship to performance and energy, um, and just the sheer vastness that the response was, right? From
Mhm.
nights opening for Murder by Death, but there were also nights where you guys played with very heavy bands, and you
Yeah,
still
I
felt
remember Dillinger Escape Plan. Like that was a great show. We had no business playing shows.
600
It
dudes that
worked.
looked like me in front of the Scarlet Ending, who all stood there mouths agape at how genuinely like enthralling the performance was.
Yeah, it was like looking back, it really was such a special thing. I think at the time we didn't quite realize what it meant for us or what it was actually happening because we were just kind of in a mindset where we were just out to prove something to everyone. So it didn't matter who we were opening for. Like our goal was like, okay, we're gonna do what we do. And if you don't like us, that's okay. But I'm pretty sure if you give us a chance, you probably will.
And they did every single time.
Who doesn't like pop music? It's at its core, there's just something that and I think, and my parents, but that's the reason why we were the way that we were with that band, why we, you know, took it as far as we did with stage outfits and we had a whole vibe that like, nobody at the time, certainly on a local level was doing, but the closest you could get was like Alkaline Trio and the White Stripes, that kind of vibe. And growing up watching, like David Bowie and Queen and Genesis, like watching those concerts, we were like, oh, if we're musicians, like we have to put on, it's not just about the music, it's about putting on a show. And that's even something I carry with me now. Like, even though I don't always play full band shows, like I have tour outfits. Like I go to work, I change my outfit, I get ready for work.
Absolutely. And the other thing from that time period to now that carries through for me in the music, especially, is the authenticity
Mm.
in the fact that your songs, although very personal to you, are very relatable, and that you write and speak in a language that we all understand and commonly use. And to me,
Thanks.
that's the inherent charm and in the appeal for me to what you do. And every single person that I play your current stuff for just absolutely falls head over heels in love with it. Right. Like, and I don't preface it with anybody
Thanks.
who might know you with, oh, this is Kayleigh from the Scarlet Ink. It's just, hey, check this new artist out. Right. So, like, and it's something that was the big appeal for me with the Scarlet Ending, with both you and Kalina contributing to the lyrical and vocal aspect of it. But the part of it that's carried on now into your solo efforts is so incredibly, like, I don't want to say like an open wound, right? Because I don't want to give an
Mm.
implication that everything is, but it's so fresh and honest, right? Like it's a perspective that we don't get very frequently in the music industry in 2024. I think it's a big reason why artists like Noah Kahan and Zach Bryan have broken through, because those are artists that I would put you in the same category as. There's a young lady from the
Thanks.
UK that I think you're akin to. Her name is Jade Bird.
Oh yeah, yeah.
She's another one that uses uh, that honest emotion with a vocabulary that is commonly used to really get across the points of the songs. Um, I adore what you're doing now. And
Thank
the
you.
one thing I would like to acknowledge, because I'm pretty sure I caught this that you posted over the weekend, is that you are now officially 10 years into your solo career.
That's nuts, right? But I also want to say that the whole reason that my solo career even exists and took off the way that it did was from all of the work that we did with the Scarlet Ending. We played a show, we played an acoustic show with Chuck Reagan in, I don't know the date. It had to have been 2009, 2010, somewhere around there, because I had just moved to New York. And then I got a Facebook message from Chuck asking me to do the revival tour. And it was like that, uh, like we were talking briefly about how there was kind of like this little gated community of the Syracuse music scene, but anybody who did come into it, like Chuck, like I'm so grateful, but he saw something in this local band and then he wanted to showcase me on a larger stage in New York. And that was the biggest show I'd ever played. And obviously that then rolled into everything else. But also another band that Scarlet Ending played with was Frank Turner before Frank Turner was as huge as Frank Turner is now. Yeah, fast forward probably 10 years later and we're still very good friends. I play at his festivals. I did that tour with him in 2019. It all started because and I think maybe it's from growing up and being in a music scene that is so uh far away from larger markets where we don't always get the biggest bands, but when they come through, like, we were hungry. We felt like we had something to prove, and I think we did whenever we could. And I'm grateful that some people noticed that and then wanted to kind of continue to see where we were at. Unfortunately, the band didn't exist at that time, but with me still making music, like it, though that the Scarlet Ending was a huge inroad for me for everything I've done since.
Right. Well, it was a great starting point, right? Because there was some
Hmm.
comfort with it being you and your twin sister
Hmm.
fronting the band. The band grew, took on new members as time went on. I think that the final form of the band was probably my favorite lineup.
Yeah.
Just with you and your sister, John Ted, Nick Streeter, Jess,
Hmm.
um, just Aaron on bass, right? Like it was just an incredible collection of people that had all had successes in and around, but didn't necessarily fit in anywhere. And it felt like the pieces fit here. You know,
Yes.
it was one of those things where like I remember there was a time period where you guys were doing like the SRO shows.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
drummer situation got sketchy, and it was just like, and then it was almost like I think a year between seeing you guys live or being in the same space because I was doing things, you guys were doing things, and then that next show was the lineup. And it
Hmm.
was just one of those things where it just clicked. I remember having so many conversations with people that night about like, yeah, this is the final four.
Yeah. Yeah. It that last group that we had was just like and I think it was because it stemmed from like all of us doing what we did in the local music scene for so long and having such a deep respect for each other that then once we kind of figured it out, we were like, oh yeah, this is it. Like we all knew what we were doing. We knew what we wanted to do. We'd been doing it for long enough that we knew how to do it on a like, just one level up. And I mean, I do think it's funny because even looking back, the fact that the Scarlet Ending never toured outside of like the Northeast, I don't think we ever went much further than that, but we did USO tours all over the world. Like that's kind of
Wild,
crazy. It's really wild. And it's funny because it's even still like talking to friends now, our band never toured internationally, let alone domestically, but we have these crazy stories from the Middle East and Africa and Greenland. Like it's we had a really weird, wild timeline as a band for sure.
oh, absolutely. And again, I'll say it. I said it at the beginning. I think you guys were 10 years too soon,
Mm,
right? Like had you guys popped off the way you did 10 years later,
yeah.
it would have been a whole different thing, right? Because the world has changed and touring is easier and right, like there's as much as Syracuse doesn't represent that, there's more venues now and more opportunities and
The
you know,
reach is there too. Like even from a social media perspective, like, there's probably things that we would have done now that we couldn't have done back then to kind of get ourselves out there a little bit more.
well, just the fact that it's twin sisters fronting a very musical band that is bombastic live. You put any footage in the social spaces and it's going to go viral.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we were a large band. Who has three-part harmonies regularly? It's pretty insane.
That's what made you guys so special,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
in a time period where there was a lot of stomp, stomp, grunt, I hate my dad music in the world, right? Like, here are these six kids combining like all of these elements into one thing, right? Like, because I had this conversation with a lot of musicians over the course of the pandemic, right? Is there got to be this time period where it felt like Brandon Urie, Dallin Weeks, guys like that were pushing almost a musical theater vibe to the forefront
Hmm.
of their presentation. But in my mind, it didn't feel as fresh and new and as everybody said it was because I had experienced a decade of the Scarlet Ending, who not only took sort of that approach, but also took like that Beatles-esque sort of vibe of harmonies in parts, in layering, right? And then having great taste in being able to bring in the vibe of like a murder by death to it, right? And the instrumentation, just everything that made the Scarlet Ending so unique all popped off in its own specific way after you guys had already done it and been done. So to
Mm.
me, the ingenuity that you guys showed over the course of the few records that you were able to put out, uh, I think stands the test of time for people to go back and listen to Ghosts now. I don't know that you could convince somebody that was brand new to the record that it wasn't something that just came out today.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's pretty listening to it again, like I said, after hearing your conversation with Nick, I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool. This is really cool. We did something really cool. And I'm glad that we have that. How everything kind of shaped up for us is definitely like a bummer in a lot of ways, but that's something that, as I've continued to play music and do what I do, I've been really fortunate, at least before I moved to Los Angeles. Now that I'm on the West Coast, obviously it's a little bit trickier, but the opportunities to then have a full band and then to take John and Aaron along with me. I love Nick too. Don't get me wrong. Sorry, Nick. I love you. I already had a couple of fill-in drummers just in the wings that already knew all of my songs, but um, to be able to bring John and Aaron, who aren't still playing music, that was the other thing too, is that they aren't playing music professionally still, and I really wanted to be able to kind of like blend where I am now with where I came from and have the opportunity for them to also like I love playing music with them. They're my brothers. That will never change. And they're still such incredible musicians. They deserve all of the success in the industry that they desire. But life has a way of changing your priorities and your desires, you know, and so I'm really grateful that I had the opportunity to tour with them again recently, you know. That's
It's
great.
also great to see that everybody from the band is still very successful on the
Hmm.
path they've chosen. I know
Yes,
exactly,
absolutely.
but it's proof to the dedication that you all had for your craft that you would be successful in life regardless of where you ended up.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I love we still have the group chat, you know,
I love
and
that.
I love that.
Very cool. Let's talk about where you're at today, and not
Sure.
specifically Los Angeles, but musically.
Yeah.
Um, we had a little conversation off camera at the very beginning about the evils of social media and how taxing that can be, not only as an artist, but on your personal day-to-day life. And you, I think, have found a very clever way to not only keep yourself active in the social spaces, but to figure out a way to do it in a way that doesn't inspire dread within yourself. Let's talk about your Patreon, because your song, If I Were the Moon, which is your
Mhm.
current, I believe, your February track,
No,
is
I that's January. I have
that was
another one for
January.
February. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that was January. So I'm not really,
It's
I'm
all
not,
good. All
I'm
good.
not ruining the concept of the
No,
Patreon.
no.
I went back to the January track. Um, but it's in the local. It's only Spotlight, 6:05 p.m., 95X all week long. If you can't get us on the dial because you're not in or around Syracuse, you can stream it live at 95x.com. You can download the app for free. You can teach your smart speaker to play 95X. Then you can check out Kayleigh's new song as well. I adore this track. I think
Thank you.
just based on having listened to it like 3 or 4 times since it debuted last Sunday night, like I'm at that point where I'm so curious about what comes next for
Mhm.
you. So let's talk a little bit. A, where can people find the tracks on Patreon? How can they become patrons and subscribe to get these monthly updates from?
Sure. So basically, how it all kind of came about was because as much as there's like so many awesome things happening within the music industry, it is really difficult to be a touring musician, a full-time musician right now. And especially with streaming platforms, we all know that they do not pay artists well at all. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that if you're not a major label artist, if you are an indie label, if you are on, you know, not on a label, you pay tens of thousands of dollars to make a record and then you give it away to Spotify for free so that they can pay you like 0.003 cents every stream. And now they've made it even worse, where if you don't get 1,000 streams a year on every single song in your catalog, you're not going to get paid for it, which is just, it boggles my mind as to how we've ended up where we are. I remember when you could buy a song on iTunes for $1, and that felt like a steal. You were like, oh, this is very reasonable. So, on top of that, with the whole you have to post every day on social media, you have to make reels. And I'm watching colleagues like try to figure out a way to make waves on social media, but it has nothing to do with their music. I had people in the business telling me that I needed to be watching viral sounds to put to my videos. And I was like, that defeats the purpose. Like, what am I trying to do? That I'm a musician. If it's not my music that's going viral, I really don't care. Um, you know, so I was really feeling a little lost and frustrated right when I moved to LA because I really needed to kind of switch things up and change my perspective. And at the end of the day, what I want to do is make more music and make more art. And the best way that I can do that is to make it myself. I don't have the flexible income to be in the studio every single month. So I was like, hey, what can I do? I can write music. I can learn to become a better producer in my apartment. I can self-release it. How can I self-release it so I'm not getting screwed by a streaming platform? Well, why don't I just sell it to people who want to buy it directly from an artist? So every single month this year, I'm releasing a brand new song on the first of the month. My Patreon is $2, and that buys you a song, and I'm making artwork as well. So that at the end of the year, I'll have 12 songs, 12 pieces of artwork. To me, it doesn't feel as sometimes I feel like asking for money or having subscribers or things like that felt disingenuous to me if I didn't feel like there was like a trade happening. And I understand that that's like my own issues. I'm working through that. But this was my compromise where I was like, for $2, that's like less than a cup of coffee. If you can buy a song for $2, like you have no idea how many. I wanted to keep it that low because gathering a following on social media is one thing, but to have people just give you $2 for a song, that changes your life. That helps you pay your rent. That you have no idea how far that $2 goes. And some people are like, well, it's nothing. Well, it's something. And it helps me make more music, and it helps, keep the lights on quite literally. And so every single month, I am challenging myself to become a better musician, songwriter, producer, mixer. I've been working with some friends to bounce ideas off of, and it's been a really cool um, process already. And it's not easy. It's really not easy because what I also think people don't realize is that, most people, when we write songs, like not all of them end up on a record, but at the end of my 30-day period, I have to have a song that needs to come out. So it's like ready or not, this is what I've worked on this month. And that's also like a really cool exercise in not being so attached to your art and just kind of like letting it go when it's time.
I love that. And like I said, the two that you've released so far have been glorious.
Thank you.
I look forward to the next 10. Uh,
Thanks.
and I think that you've definitely figured out who you are as an artist and what's important to you. And I love that because ultimately, at the end of the day, you put yourself in control of your own destiny.
Hmm.
I think that you have been putting the work in for so long that it's just this natural thing for you to continue to work hard. And I think that based on everything that I've seen with you, your previous bandmates, what you're doing right now with the Patreon, is that this all leads to the success that I think that you've earned over the course of all of this hard work. And I hope you know that we here at 95X, and I'll dare speak for the city of Syracuse, have your back,
Oh,
regardless of whether
thanks.
you're here or not. You are one of my absolute favorite artists to ever come out of Syracuse in the almost 30 years that I've been doing this. So watching you grow and succeed over the years has been one of my absolute favorite things.
Thank
Um,
you.
and I look forward to what comes next for you. And I'm hoping that maybe we can just catch up every once in a while, fill in the people of Syracuse where you're at on your journey on the West Coast. And
Absolutely.
at the end of the day, I would love to be able to figure out a way when you're touring to get you back in Syracuse and throw you that proper show that you've deserved for the
Mm,
last 3 or 4 years since the world's opened back up.
thank you. And also, Dixon, your support has been like just like a heartbeat, not only through the Scarlet Inning, but through everything that we've all done since then. Like, I hope you know that you've done so much uh, just incredible stuff for the community in general, but also for the music scene. Like, you are such a mainstay of that, and like, that's why when I heard that, the podcast with Nick, I immediately contacted you. I was like, "Yo, and of course, I'd missed Facebook messages from you because I am terrible at the internet. But yeah, no, we're family. It's like this bond of being a part of something so great and so, you know, it's really special.
Well, I just need to say that I'm very proud of you. I can't
Thank you.
honestly, I don't have words sometimes for how proud I am of some of the people that I've watched go from awkward 15-year-old musician finding their way to full blown adult
You
who
definitely
plays
saw that for sure.
right. But not everybody ends up being the girl that's on tour and playing with Frank Turner, right? and all of these other amazing opportunities that you've had. When I get to talk to like the guys in the camp from Blue October, right,
Hmm.
who know you're from Syracuse and know I'm from Syracuse, and then they call up and want a reference on you, right? Like that
Mm.
makes my day when I'm not expecting, my friend Paul to hit me up and say, "Hey, Kayleigh Goldsworthy, she's from Syracuse. You're from Syracuse. Have you guys ever crossed paths?" And then I get to say super nice things about you.
Oh,
To
I
the
mean,
industry.
it's definitely going back to how we didn't have a ton of big touring acts coming through. Like it's not lost on me how fortunate I am to have continued to do what I do and be friends with and colleagues with the people that I used to go and see play shows at the Furnace or Planet 505 or like it's wild to me. It really, really is. But it's amazing.
Yeah, it's weird now that I've gotten, I'm just gonna say old, right? Is that line from The Office has never rung more true of like you don't realize when the good old times were until they're long gone,
Yeah.
right? And I think about a lot of those nights where like I was so busy doing things that I never stopped, right? And then just turned and looked at the band for a second and enjoyed that. And I found myself every single time you guys played, with a couple of minor exceptions, Dillinger Escape Plan being one of them because of that insane crowd. But like, I found myself standing in front of you guys a lot more than I did other bands because it was constantly like catching my attention, right? And I think that's a great way to kind of sum up the Scarlet Ending in Syracuse. Is you guys were head turners, and now I want that same attention from here to apply to what you're doing now. I mean, I think that this run with you in the spotlight, hopefully this podcast is going to remind a lot of people of how truly special that time period was. In that, no offense to everybody else in the band, that you're the one that's really perpetuating that forward still as an
Thanks.
art
Well,
form.
I do feel like if everybody else in that band were to still apply themselves the way that they
Oh
are
yeah,
to their, like they're all
they've
destined
all
for
got their
greatness.
things. There's
That
no
work
question
ethic
about
is
it. You're
is there. Yeah,
comic
we
book
were
guy.
yeah, absolutely. Like it's and
The fact that
that's
you're still doing it all these years later, I would like to
yeah.
remind people.
Yeah, no, and that's yeah, it's pretty great. And it's funny because like you said, you don't always take the time to sit back and like take it in. And I think that's something that as I've gotten older, I've started making sure that I'm doing more frequently and like my level of gratitude for the way that the music scene has kind of just welcomed us into just doing what like it's a true privilege to be able to do what I do and to still do what I do because it's not easy. And but it is like it's pretty crazy when you take a step back to see how far you've come, you know?
Absolutely. Well, you are, my friend, somebody that definitely personifies the hard work pays off mantra. And
Mm.
I think that, give it a little bit more time and we'll all see all of that hard work that you've put in over these years pay off.
Thanks. I'm certainly not going anywhere, so.
I know that. I know that. So thank you again for taking the time to do this. We'll chat again soon. I'm going to try and
Absolutely.
catch up with you probably like every 6 to 8 weeks or so when it's convenient
Perfect.
for you. I want to follow you along this Patreon journey, keep people updated, and continue to spread the word back here at home about what you're doing and seeing how many people we can get on board for you. Because I know that when asked, sometimes Syracuse can, in fact, show up.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's it's been nice now that my parents have relocated back to the Syracuse area because I get to go back now. And that's something that I also haven't been able to do so much either. So I'm really excited to continue to you know make Syracuse my second home again.
Very cool. Well, I will do everything in my power to get you back here for a proper live show when the time is right.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right. Kayleigh, thank you so much for your time today. Make sure you go and follow her on her Patreon and pay that $2 a month. I promise you the songs are worth at least 1,000 times more than that. And follow along on social media to find out where she's going to pop up next on tour. Kayleigh, congratulations on all your successes. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you so much.
It's the Locals Only podcast for 95X.